Imagine getting that dreaded news no parent ever wants to hear,
Oh, yeah.
that your child is gone
Right.
and you don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Now imagine finding out months later from a TV report about an unidentified body,
Oh, my goodness.
that body is your child.
Oh, that's awful.
That was Brenda Jones's reality.
Wow.
Back in December 1998, her 20-year-old daughter, Cassandra, vanished from Wichita, Kansas, and Brenda was left in the dark for months.
It's just unimaginable.
Absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving deep into today.
Okay.
The mystery surrounding Cassandra's disappearance and death.
Right.
We've got police reports, witness statements, investigator notes.
Yeah.
We're going to try to untangle this web of secrets and suspicion and hopefully get a little bit closer to the truth of what happened to Cassandra.
It sounds like a very complex case.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And, one of the things that makes this case so difficult is that Cassandra, she lived a bit of a complicated life.
Okay.
She was young, she's trying to find her way, and it seems like she may have gotten mixed up with some people that weren't the best influences.
Makes sense. I mean, she was a dancer at a club called Wild Cherries.
Right.
And there are even these whispers about potential involvement with escort services.
Yeah, it was a tough life for a young woman trying to make it.
It sounds like it.
And then you add in the fact that she had this on again, off again. I mean, that really doesn't even describe it.
Right.
This tumultuous relationship with a man named Sinclair Duncan,
Oh, this is the boyfriend we're talking about.
the boyfriend.
Okay.
And when you look at the sources, I mean, his name is just red flags all over the place.
Yeah.
This guy was allegedly controlling, violent.
There's a report about him stealing Cassandra's car keys so she couldn't leave.
Oh, yeah.
There was also that incident where he allegedly fired a gun at her and a friend.
Yeah. It's just really disturbing behavior.
Very disturbing.
And it makes you wonder why Cassandra kept going back to him.
Right. I mean, that's the thing that I find so fascinating here. Despite all this, these alleged incidents, it seems like she continued to have contact with him.
She did.
And there's this one detail that's particularly strange.
Okay.
They had this routine
Oh,
where Cassandra would actually braid his hair every few weeks.
yeah.
It just seems so bizarre.
It's very odd.
Considering the rest of their relationship, with the abuse and the control.
It makes you wonder about what their dynamic really was.
Yeah, what was going on there?
Was it fear, loyalty, something else entirely?
Right,
It's a question that I keep coming back to.
And it becomes even more significant when you consider that
What's that?
Sinclair's call log, it completely stops after Cassandra vanishes.
Interesting.
If they were in regular contact, even just for the hair braiding, why wouldn't he call again?
Right.
Especially after she's reported missing. It's very strange.
It's very suspicious.
Yeah, like a deliberate attempt to distance himself from her.
Okay, so we've got a potentially abusive boyfriend whose communication goes silent as soon as his girlfriend disappears. And we also have Cassandra's car. It was found abandoned with a shattered passenger window.
It's easy to see why the investigators immediately focused on Duncan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he's right there at the top of the suspect list.
But here's where things take a turn.
Okay.
Remember, Cassandra was living with Duncan for a while.
Right.
And during that time, she got into some legal trouble.
She did.
She was arrested for possession of drugs and a concealed weapon.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that Duncan was in the passenger seat when this happened.
Exactly.
So it makes you wonder, was she taking the fall for him?
It's a very real possibility,
Yeah.
especially given the pattern of manipulation we've already seen.
Right.
And some sources even go so far as to suggest that maybe she was caught up in something bigger,
Okay.
like human trafficking
Wow.
with Duncan as the perpetrator.
So this is a pretty serious accusation.
It is.
Did investigators ever directly ask Duncan about any of this?
They did, but his responses were very strange. Detached, no emotion, and his alibi was weak at best.
Oh, really?
He claimed he last saw her when she came over to braid his hair in early December, which lines up with that last phone call.
Right.
But after that, nothing.
It almost seems like he's trying to downplay their connection.
It does.
Right. If he was truly innocent, wouldn't he be doing more?
You would think so.
More proactive, more desperate to find her?
Absolutely. And the more we dig into these witness statements, the more suspicious it gets.
What do you mean?
Well, one of Cassandra's friends, Alice,
Okay.
she confirmed seeing Cassandra on December 13th, right before she went to braid Duncan's hair.
So that seems like the last time anyone saw her, for sure.
It appears so.
Okay, so we've got a last known sighting. A boyfriend who seems to be erasing himself from the story.
Yeah.
What about Cassandra's other friends?
Well, they had information, but it's like they were wrapped in fear.
Oh, really?
It was clear many of them were terrified to talk, worried about the repercussions.
I mean, a lot of Cassandra's friends had ties to gangs, and that often creates this code of silence.
Makes it incredibly difficult to investigate.
Yeah, it's a tragic reality that sadly we see play out with two individuals in particular mentioned in the sources, Shell and LW.
Oh, yes, Shell, what a character.
Right.
After they found Cassandra's body, she asked Brenda if she'd gotten her Grand Am back.
Like she knew the car was missing during the time Cassandra was gone.
Exactly.
Wow.
But when the police questioned her, she changed her story multiple times.
So suspicious.
Very suspicious.
It's like she knows something but is terrified to say it.
Absolutely. And then there's LW.
Yeah.
According to his cousin, Duncan told him what happened to Cassandra.
Really?
This juvenile was in detention, and he claimed his cousin LW knew the truth because Duncan had confessed to him.
Wow.
But when they questioned LW, he denied everything.
It's like everyone's dancing around the truth, afraid to step into the light.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
It really is. But there's one person who is not afraid to speak her mind.
Brenda.
Brenda Jones, Cassandra's mother. And her story is just one of unimaginable grief and frustration.
That is.
I mean, she lost her only child
Right.
in this horrific way.
Yeah.
And she spent over 2 decades searching for answers.
And being met with silence from the people who know?
Exactly. It's like they're protecting the person who killed her daughter.
You can hear the pain in her voice when she talks about Cassandra.
It's palpable.
She believes she knows who's responsible.
And she's not afraid to name him.
Right, and she's not alone in that belief.
Right. Investigator Mary Mattingly also seems to think that Duncan holds the key to this whole mystery.
It does seem like there's a growing consensus there.
But then why hasn't he been charged?
Well, that's where the investigation takes another complicated turn.
Oh, boy.
There's a lot of suspicion around Duncan,
Yeah.
but there are also some differing opinions about his motive.
Okay, so let's talk about these theories.
Right.
What do investigators think might have happened?
So Mattingly, she leans towards this theory about Cassandra's new boyfriend at the time, a man referred to as Larry.
Okay. There are rumors that Cassandra actually stole drugs and money from Duncan, and that Larry had put her up to it.
Oh, wow.
Mattingly believes that this theft might have been the trigger.
For a violent retaliation.
Exactly, like Duncan sending a message.
Right.
Don't mess with me.
Making an example of Cassandra.
Right. Protect his reputation, deter anyone else from doing the same.
A brutal assertion of dominance.
It is, but then there's Sergeant Lynch.
Okay, another investigator.
He has a different take.
What's his theory?
Lynch thinks the motive was much more personal.
Oh, okay.
He believes that Duncan was driven by jealousy and possessiveness.
Because Cassandra was slipping away.
Exactly, and that's what led to her death.
So we have two possible motives.
Right.
Both pointing to Duncan,
Yeah.
but stemming from completely different places.
It is fascinating.
One is about power and reputation. The other is about possessiveness and rage.
A classic case of conflicting theories and not much solid evidence.
So it leaves us with that big question.
What really happened to Cassandra in those final days?
And will we ever know for sure?
It's a chilling thought,
It is.
and I bet our listeners are eager to hear more.
I'm sure they are.
We're going to have to wait for the next part of our deep dive to really explore the evidence in depth
We'll see if any of these theories actually hold up.
and hopefully get a little closer to the truth of Cassandra's tragic fate.
I look forward to it. You know, it's amazing to me how even within the police department, you have this real split about what happened,
Right.
about what actually caused Cassandra's death,
Yeah,
and that lack of clarity. I mean, that's a big part of what holds back these investigations.
absolutely. I mean, without concrete evidence, it's really tough to bring charges,
Right.
even when there's a lot of suspicion.
Exactly. And in this case,
Yeah,
a lot of that evidence hinges on what happened to Cassandra's body.
that's right. Because investigators think that she was probably killed somewhere else
Yeah.
and then dumped on that rural road where they found her.
Right. They're still trying to find the original crime scene,
Oh, wow.
hoping that maybe, even after all this time, some forensic evidence will turn up.
So there's still a chance,
Yeah.
however small, that some crucial piece of evidence is still out there,
It's possible.
just waiting to be discovered.
Hopefully.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about what happened to Duncan.
Okay.
He wasn't charged with Cassandra's murder,
Right.
but did he just completely escape justice?
Well, not exactly.
How come?
Remember when they searched his apartment,
Yeah.
they found drugs and a gun,
Yeah.
and because he was a convicted felon on parole, that was a big violation.
Oh, right. He had that prior arrest for aggravated robbery.
Exactly. And that involved a firearm, too.
So he ended up back in prison.
Yep. Those charges landed him right back behind bars.
So even though he didn't face consequences for Cassandra's death,
Right.
his own actions caught up with him in the end.
They did.
It's a small victory, but it does show this pattern of criminal behavior. This tendency towards violence and disregard for the law.
No question about it.
It really makes you question his character
Absolutely.
and makes those allegations of abuse and control seem much more believable.
Yeah, for sure.
But going back to the investigation, it seems like everyone agrees that Duncan is somehow at the center of this.
Right.
But proving it is a whole other story.
It is, and that's the frustrating part.
Yeah, you have all this suspicion, these rumors.
Yeah.
But without hard evidence, it's just speculation.
It is, and it makes this case all the more tragic when you think about Cassandra.
Yeah.
She was a young woman trying to turn her life around.
She's going to business school.
Right, working towards a better future.
And it was all taken from her.
It was heartbreaking.
And Brenda, her mother, left to deal with this unimaginable loss.
I can't even imagine.
No closure for over 2 decades.
It's a terrible reminder of how unsolved crimes affect not just the victims,
Yeah.
but their families too.
Absolutely. Brenda's story really highlights that human cost.
It-
Those years of not knowing, the constant wondering, the unanswered questions.
The toll is immeasurable.
It really is. And in this case, it feels like those answers might actually be out there,
Yeah.
locked away in the silence of those who knew Cassandra.
Right, and it makes you think,
Yeah.
what if someone had spoken up sooner?
What if they had chosen courage over fear?
It's a haunting thought.
It is, but even with all the challenges, the investigators haven't given up.
That's good to hear.
They're still actively working on the case,
Hopefully they'll find something.
hoping that someday justice will be served.
It's a long shot,
It is.
but it's important to hold on to that hope.
And maybe by sharing Cassandra's story, by bringing it into the light,
Yeah.
someone out there might remember something,
It's possible?
might have that missing piece of the puzzle.
That could crack the case wide open.
That's right. That's the power of storytelling,
Absolutely.
the power of keeping these cases in the public eye.
Sometimes all it takes is that one tiny detail.
Right.
One person who decides to speak up.
And it can make all the difference.
Exactly, and it's a reminder that even the smallest actions can have a huge impact.
That's true. And in a case like this,
Yeah.
where silence is ruled for so long,
Right.
any voice that breaks that silence could be the key to unlocking the truth.
That's a really powerful thought.
It is, and it's why we do what we do.
Right.
Why we dive into these complex cases.
To give a voice to the voiceless.
Exactly. Because sometimes all it takes is a little spark of hope, a little light in the darkness to change things.
That's beautifully said.
And with that, let's move to the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore the bigger implications of Cassandra's case
Sounds good.
and what we can all learn from her story.
Mm.
You know, Cassandra's story really makes you think about how vulnerable some people are,
Yeah.
especially young women in tough situations.
Absolutely.
And it makes you wonder what we can even do to prevent these kinds of tragedies.
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
I think Cassandra's case really highlights the importance of just being aware. Aware of those signs. The signs of
Yeah.
abuse, of exploitation,
What kind of signs?
changes in behavior, withdrawing from people, unexplained injuries.
Right.
Those could all be signs that someone's trapped in a bad situation.
So it's not just about knowing about the problem in general.
No.
It's about paying attention to the people in our lives.
Yes, exactly.
Really listening, noticing when something seems off.
It's about creating a space where people feel safe.
Safe.
Safe enough to ask for help when they need it.
Right. And we have to challenge those harmful stereotypes that prevent people from seeking help.
Absolutely. We need to remember that human trafficking,
Yeah.
it's not something that only happens somewhere else.
To other people.
Right. It can happen anywhere, to anyone.
So we need to break down those misconceptions.
Yeah,
Recognize that anyone can be vulnerable.
exactly. And by educating ourselves and others,
Yeah.
we can all be more vigilant and create a safer society.
So true. And what about law enforcement?
What about it?
What can they do to improve these investigations?
Right.
And actually hold these perpetrators accountable?
Well, especially when witnesses are too afraid to talk.
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
it is.
I think it requires a multi-pronged approach.
Right.
Building trust in communities where there's gang activity, that's huge.
Right.
Supporting witnesses who are afraid of retaliation.
Make them feel safe.
Exactly. And having special units in law enforcement trained to handle these sensitive cases.
That makes sense.
It can really make a difference.
So no easy answers, but
Yeah,
we need to keep pushing for progress on all fronts.
absolutely.
And even though Cassandra's case isn't solved yet,
Right.
her story can really be a force for positive change.
It can. It can spark important conversations, raise awareness, inspire action.
And remind us that we all have a part to play
Yeah,
in making the world a safer and more just place.
absolutely.
And that's really the message we want our listeners to take away from this deep dive.
That's a good message.
Cassandra's memory. It shouldn't be defined by this tragedy,
No.
but by her resilience and by the fight for justice that continues in her name.
Well said.
And if anyone out there has any information about Cassandra's case, anything at all,
No matter how small it seems.
please contact the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office.
You can find their contact info in our show notes.
Even the smallest detail
Mhm.
could be what they need to finally solve this case
Right.
and bring some peace
Mhm.
to Brenda and everyone who loved Cassandra.
It's a reminder that we can't just stand by and do nothing.
Right.
We have to speak up. We have to be vigilant. We have to support each other.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's take
Yeah.
Cassandra's story with us.
Good
Not just
then.
as a tragedy, but as a call to action.
Yes.
Let's all work together
Absolutely.
to create a world where stories like hers
Yeah.
become less and less frequent.
And where victims can find the help and justice they deserve.
Exactly. And until next time,
Yes.
stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay compassionate.
Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.